Hey everyone, and welcome to your deep dive. We're diving into the world of art today
Oh, yeah.
and looking at the ideas of these two Japanese artists, uh,
Okay.
Hideki, a sculptor, and Mayumi, a painter.
All right.
And, this transcript you sent over of their conversation is just amazing.
It is. I was really struck by
Yeah.
how much they were able to kind of like go back and forth between
Mm.
really practical studio stuff and
Yeah.
then like big picture, like what is art's role in the world kind of reflections.
Yeah, and even like how we spend our time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like right away, Hideki's talking about this exhibition he has coming up in Kyoto, March 28th and 29th.
Oh, wow.
So if you're in Japan, mark your calendars.
Yeah.
But it's not just any show.
Right.
He's going to be lighting his sculptures at night
Oh, wow.
in a temple.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So they really go deep into how that environment is going to totally change how people view the art.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like you're saying, it's not just the piece itself,
Yeah.
it's the whole mood,
Exactly.
the whole vibe of the space.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of how Mayumi was describing
Yes.
this exhibition of Hideki's work that she went to
Okay.
that also had a bunch of other sculptures.
Oh, cool.
And it was at the Terada Warehouse in Tennoji.
Okay.
Which, side note, is this
Ah.
really cool complex that's actually known for being involved in the art scene,
Interesting.
but also, oddly enough, for wine storage.
What?
Like they have a whole thing with wine there.
So they've got like art and wine like all mixed up in this?
Yeah, apparently.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of this interesting, unexpected combination of
I
things.
love that.
But back to the exhibit,
Yeah.
what Mayumi was saying was that she was really captivated by how
Yeah.
each artist had basically created their own little world within their space.
I can imagine.
So like you felt transported when you went in there.
Yeah.
And so then she's on a bus ride home with Hideki,
Okay.
and she's having this like light bulb moment. And
Yeah.
she starts talking about how cool it would be
Okay.
to just encounter these like artistic worlds like unexpectedly
Oh,
embedded in the city.
interesting.
And that's where the kanako comes in.
Oh, yeah. What's kanako?
So kanako, for anyone listening who might not be familiar,
Okay.
is roasted soybean flour.
All right.
It's a pretty common ingredient in like Japanese sweets and snacks.
Gotcha.
But she uses it as this image
Okay.
of something that's totally out of context, that's just suddenly popping up in the urban landscape.
So it'd be like walking down the street and all
Yeah.
of a sudden there's just like kanako everywhere.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a very strange but like thought-provoking
Yeah.
image.
Yeah.
And I think it really speaks to this desire that they both have
Yeah.
to break down these barriers between like what's art
Yeah.
and what's everyday life.
Yeah.
To make art something that you encounter in unexpected ways.
And I think really it makes you question,
It's
like,
in-
where does art belong?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, does it belong in a gallery? Does it belong on the street? Where does it belong?
Exactly.
And this actually leads into Mayumi's own vision
Okay.
for how she wants to display her paintings.
All right.
Because she's not really into that like sterile white cube gallery.
Yeah, the white cube thing.
Yeah, she's much more drawn to like a natural environment.
Okay.
Specifically, she talks about wanting to exhibit in a forest
Wow.
and to let the surroundings become part of the art.
That's amazing.
So it's like the light filtering through the trees, the sounds of nature.
Yeah.
All of that becomes part of
Take a whole experience.
the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she doesn't want people to just like see a flat canvas on a wall.
Right.
She wants them to experience the whole atmosphere.
Totally.
Reminds me of those like immersive installations that are so popular now,
Yeah.
but like taking it outdoors
Yeah.
into a forest.
Next level.
Yeah, next level.
I love it.
And she actually has some pretty interesting ideas about
Wow.
how to actually make this happen.
Yeah.
So they're brainstorming about like maybe cafes with lots of plants,
Oh, cool.
partnering with plant nurseries,
Oh, wow.
even using spaces like the Shibuya Furai Botanical Center.
Yeah.
So,
I can see it.
it's clear that she really wants to like blur those lines
Let's hope.
between art and nature
Yeah.
and create an experience that's really multisensory and engaging.
Yeah.
I think what's cool is that they're not just talking about aesthetics here.
Yeah.
Like there's this deeper
Yeah.
philosophical idea at play.
Yeah.
Like this sense that art can be more powerful
Totally.
when it's integrated into our everyday lives.
Yeah.
When it like surprises us and makes us see the world differently.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And
This actually leads into a really interesting conversation about time.
Okay.
Which is Mayumi struggles with feeling like there's never enough of it.
I feel that.
And she complains about time a lot.
I think we can all relate to that.
I think so too.
But then she has this epiphany.
Okay.
That really shifts her perspective.
Oh, I want to hear about this.
All right, so tell me more about this epiphany. What happens?
Okay, so she's having this late night conversation with a friend who's a radio producer and another friend.
Right.
And they kind of get into this philosophical discussion about time, how time is this limited resource.
Right.
How we all wish we had more time.
Yeah, for sure.
And somebody makes this statement that is so simple.
Okay.
They just say time exists.
Wow. I'm already feeling my mind bend a little.
It seems so obvious, but for Mayumi, it's like a lightning bolt.
Oh, wow.
She realizes that she's been making time, this external force that's controlling her instead of seeing it as something that she has agency over.
So it's not about actually having more time.
Yeah.
It's about how we choose to use the time that we have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's incredible how this realization immediately unlocks this burst of energy in her.
Okay.
The very next morning, she starts a new painting.
Oh, wow.
It's like this mental block has been removed.
That is so inspiring.
Yeah.
I know I'm so guilty of that whole I don't have time excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes you think about what we could all achieve if we stop seeing time as the enemy.
Totally.
And started looking at it as an opportunity.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
And it ties back so beautifully to Mayumi and the vision for her art.
Okay.
Remember how she was talking about wanting to display her work in a forest to create this immersive experience?
Yeah. It was about more than just the visual aspect of the paintings.
Yeah.
It was about feeling the whole space, the atmosphere, the connection to nature.
Yeah. And when you think about it, that kind of experience takes time.
Right.
You can't just rush through a forest.
You got to slow down.
You got to be present. You got to let yourself kind of be absorbed in the environment.
Totally.
So in a way, Mayumi's epiphany about time is also about creating space for those kinds of deep, meaningful experiences,
Totally.
both in art and in life.
That is such a good point.
Yeah.
It's she's saying we need to make time.
Yes.
For the things that truly matter, for the experiences that nourish our souls.
Absolutely. And art can be a really powerful reminder of that.
Oh, for sure.
Speaking of powerful reminders, let's go back to that image that Mayumi was describing when she was on the bus with Hideki, the Kanako in the city.
Yeah.
It was such a striking visual.
It was.
What do you think she was trying to get at with that? Beyond just breaking down the barriers between art and everyday life.
Yeah. What was the deeper meaning there?
Well, for me, it speaks to the element of surprise.
Okay.
You're walking down a familiar street. You're caught up in your routine.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there's this unexpected burst of color texture, something that makes you stop and look at your surroundings differently.
It's she wants to shake us out of our complacency a little bit.
Yeah.
Remind us that beauty and wonder can exist anywhere.
Yeah.
Even in the most mundane places, if we're open to seeing it.
And I think that's where the real power of art lies. It's not just about creating beautiful objects.
Yeah.
It's about shifting our perspective,
Totally.
opening our minds to new possibilities, and making us more aware of the world around us.
It makes me think of something else they were talking about, too, which was this idea of collaboration.
Yes.
And how it fuels creativity. I mean, just listening to them brainstorm about Mayumi's exhibition was so inspiring.
You could just feel the energy building as they were bouncing ideas off of each other.
Yeah, totally.
I think it highlights something really important about the creative process. It often thrives in community.
Yeah.
When we share our ideas with others, when we get feedback and encouragement, it pushes us to think bigger and bolder.
It reminds me of that saying.
What's that?
If you want to go fast, go alone.
Okay.
If you want to go far, go together.
I love that.
It's their conversation became this microcosm of that idea.
Yeah.
Their individual thoughts were sparking all these new possibilities when they combined them.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about you, the listener.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of your passions?
Yeah.
Or creative pursuits?
Or there projects you've been putting off because you don't have time?
Yeah.
Or maybe you're feeling stuck and you could use some inspiration from a creative community?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
You can connect with us on our website.
On social media.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
And as we wrap up this part of the deep dive,
let's
take a moment to appreciate the wisdom that Mayumi shared about time. It really is a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Time exists.
It does.
But how we choose to use it is up to us.
So true. Now, before we jump back into the conversation, I want to touch on something that I think is incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
Remember how Mayumi was drawn to that cafe near Yaragasaki intersection?
Yeah.
Because it had so many plants.
Oh, yeah.
She even envisioned her paintings being displayed, like, amongst all the greenery.
Right.
It's almost as if, like, the cafe itself was like a living art installation.
Totally. And she also mentions the Furii Botanical Center in Shibuya, which I've actually been to.
Oh, cool.
It is a beautiful space that really does blend nature and art seamlessly.
And what's so interesting to me is that they're not just talking about pretty spaces. Yeah.
They're talking about a fundamental shift in how we experience art.
Okay, so instead of art being confined to a gallery or a museum, it becomes part of, like, the fabric of our daily lives.
Exactly.
But how does that actually change our relationship with art?
I think it invites us to become more active participants in the art experience.
Okay.
We're not just passively observing an object in a museum.
Right.
We're encountering art in unexpected places.
Yeah.
In contexts that might make us question it, reinterpret it, reimagine it.
Kind of like how Mayumi's Kinako image made us rethink the urban landscape.
Totally.
It's like we're suddenly seeing the familiar in a whole new light.
And that shift in perspective can be incredibly powerful.
Totally.
You know, it can shake us out of our routines, make us question our assumptions, and open us up to new ways of seeing and experiencing the world.
It's about, like, cultivating a sense of wonder and curiosity.
I love that in the everyday.
It's like art becomes a catalyst for a more mindful, more engaged way of living.
Yeah.
Instead of just walking down the street, you're noticing the play of light and shadow, the textures of buildings, the unexpected beauty in the mundane.
I love that.
And it reminds me of something else that struck me about their conversation, the way they talked about the impact of the environment on the art itself.
Right.
Mayumi, in particular, seemed to believe that displaying her work in a forest would allow nature to interact with it and enhance it in this really unique way.
Yeah, she even described her work as being happy when it was displayed outdoors.
I love that.
It's like the art becomes part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Almost like a living, breathing thing.
Totally.
That evolves and changes with its surroundings.
And that raises some really fascinating questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, like, does the exposure to the natural world actually change the artwork over time?
Right.
Does it weather?
Does it fit?
Does it even, like, evolve in response to the elements?
Exactly.
It definitely challenges that traditional idea of art
Totally.
as a static, unchanging object.
Yeah, what if we embraced this idea of art as, like, a dynamic process?
Yeah.
Shaped by the forces of nature and the passage of time.
It's a beautiful and humbling thought.
It is.
It reminds us that even the most carefully crafted artwork is ultimately subject to forces beyond our control.
Right.
And there's a certain poetry in that surrender, in that acceptance of impermanence.
And as we come to the end of this deep dive,
I
think it's worth reflecting on how these ideas might apply to our own lives.
What if we approached our lives with the same sense of openness and curiosity and willingness to experiment that we see in Hideki and Mayumi?
What if we embraced the idea of making art a part of our everyday lives?
Yeah.
Not just as passive consumers, but as active creators and participants.
And what if we allowed ourselves to be transformed by the art we encounter? To see the world through new eyes.
To live more creatively and intentionally.
Those are powerful questions to consider.
They are.
And I think they really speak to the heart of what Hideki and Mayumi were exploring in their conversation. This transformative power of art.
Yeah.
Not just to create beauty.
Right.
But to enrich our lives.
Yeah.
And deepen our connection to the world around us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we did.